We have no plan.
Nope. We got a small plan. We're back. It's another episode of Conversations About God.
We just go where the wind blows us.
Which is this room every time. Always just blows. That's Casey Stagg grinning like an idiot. He's Dave Bowden because Casey can't talk right now.
I got him.
And I'm Ryan McKenzie, and we're here. Today we're talking. We're going for it. No, keep it going.
Edit.
Today
we can edit.
Well, we'll get it in post. I run the post, so it's okay. Today, Dave is going to share.
We're keeping that.
Oh, it's going to be good.
We're keeping it. It's going on the internet.
Today, Dave's going to share his story
interwebs.
About adoption, fostering, growing their family. We're really excited to hear his story. Before we get to that, Casey has never heard of a jackalope. I happen to be wearing a shirt proving that jackalopes exist because that's
someone drew one on it.
That's an actual photo.
This is a silhouette that they traced.
This is a photograph. If I've ever seen a photograph, that's a photograph.
If you've never heard of a jackalope, it's a crossbreed between a jackrabbit and an antelope. They come together, they have babies. They look like little rabbits with horns, and they are very common at night for about an hour or two at night in only the northern Midwest. Northern Midwest.
Nocturnal?
Yeah. Common
Science? Golly. Who are we?
You've never heard of a jackalope?
No. Never seen one. Never heard of one.
Well,
Don't think they exist.
What's that animal? Oh, it's common at night. What a description.
So, instead of starting this train wreck over, we're going to keep it going. You've seen a jackalope, though.
Plenty.
Yeah. We actually went out to Montana. We didn't go to Montana. We went to South Dakota. Went to the Badlands this summer.
Let me clarify. I've never seen an adult.
They're very rare. So jackalopes' life expectancy, from what I've been told right now by myself, is not very long.
36 days.
Yeah. So some grow to adulthood and look like this. They're very rare. If you look them up online, you can buy an adult jackalope bust, like the head with the horns, but they are very expensive because it's very rare they grow that old. But babies look like baby jackrabbits, and it's really hard to tell. You can just see a tiny little bump in their head where the horns are about to grow. It's it's fascinating now. I got video of baby jackalopes on our trip. I'll have to share it with you.
Yeah.
It was really great.
It's irrefutable.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think narwhals existed if you just heard about a whale with a giant unicorn horn, but they're real. So, I mean...
They come out at night, or...?
They actually do.
They're common at night.
Common at night.
So, my wife just a couple of years ago discovered that narwhals were actually real. She was like, there's no way that's real. And I'm like, yes, this is a real animal. I had to, show her footage of it, like the footage you have.
Yeah, people don't realize that the first narwhal was actually a beluga whale and a unicorn. Made it have a baby. Yeah, it was took some time, but it worked out.
We are losing followers.
People are. I can watch them falling off the. Yep. Okay, let's get to this. What are we talking about today?
We're not. He is.
What are you talking about?
Apparently,
today?
I'm speaking the most.
All right, so we're gonna ask you questions.
Option.
We're gonna ask you some questions. People complain about how bad they hear you, so we're gonna move the mic over to you so you can.
So now they can complain about me, right?
And I'm just loud, so it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Dave, you got this adoption month. This is my story month at our church. It was Adoption Sunday last Sunday.
Yes.
We want to hear your story about adoption. When were you adopted?
I was never adopted.
Oh, okay. So I got that.
No. I have been the one to adopt.
Gotcha.
So our story of adoption begins with infertility. So my wife and I, now before we got married, my wife and I both had serious conversations about how many kids, and we both were wanting to do adoption at some point. We didn't realize it would be we'd start with and build our entire family through adoption. We thought it might be something that would happen eventually, maybe the second or third child we would, adopt. But as time went on, we discovered we were having issues actually getting pregnant. We went to doctors and had all the tests that you have to endure to discover, and they still didn't have anything definitive. They said the way it was broken down is simply 40% of the issues can be with the man, and then 40% can generally are with the woman, and then there's the rest of that percentage is just kind of like we just don't know. And so to me, in retrospect, I just go, well, that's just like the God portion of it to me, where I just go, it's just wasn't in the plans for us to have biological children. So that's the only way I can really resolve it in my head. Since both of our bodies work properly, there's just, I have to go divine intervention on that.
Yeah.
At least that's what I get there theologically. I go, okay, the way that my life is played out, and if there's nothing wrong with me, that's the only other option, right?
So 100% instead of 20%.
Yeah.
Math. It's basic math.
Carry the 8.
Yeah. Get 100.
Divide it by 3 pies. And they have to be apple. Anyway, so yeah, so there's getting that information was not fun to
What's that like to process with you're newly married, trying to have kids? What's that struggle like to go through with your wife?
Well, it was frustrating on multiple levels because it's something you both want, and you're denied it. So there's a lot of emotion. It doesn't always come out when you plan on it either. So it's not fun to just kind of one of the things that would trigger us kind of just going, man, this life, what's going on, is when people who are in the same season of life as we are would have a kid and then another kid, and we'd go to the baby showers and stuff, and it's just kind of nothing wrong with the people
right
having their lives unfold before us. It was just showing us, hey, look what you still don't have. And there's a beautiful side to it too. As much as it's frustrating, it kind of shows you that suffering can produce some wonderful things too. I remember being frustrated and angry because I'm good at fixing things. What I do in my job, I can do that. I'm a homeowner. I have gotten adept at fixing things myself. But this is one, and I've been involved in ministry since I've been in my early 20s. And I've been a part of seeing people's lives get transformed and quote unquote fixed to a degree. And then I just couldn't make this particular one happen.
Yeah.
So it was just you feel powerless. Frustrated, powerless. You're watching your wife cry, and then just trying to encourage her in that, but you're still internally frustrated. And I would cry. I read books. I prayed probably more than I ever have at any point in my life. Lots of prayer, really lots of being honestly frustrated and angry at God at times, and just kind of venting all that, and just going, I can't contain it, can't hold it in, it'll make me bitter and angry, so I gotta get it out. Lots of people praying for us, and it ran the gamut from people encouraging us to saying things that were hurtful to people saying God is going to make this happen for you, you're going to have biological children, and it's okay, false prophet now, because at this point, so it's you go through all that and you sift through it all, and
probably well-meaning, but they just don't realize that that's not, man, that's
sure
tough, yeah.
But so yeah, but the sweet end of it is it really made me seek God for comfort and significance, and all right, what if I can't, you have to deal with the thought, what if I can't have kids? What does that mean? Okay, I don't have little mini versions of myself running around there with my genetics in it, and that doesn't go on into the future. Is that important to me? It made me think about, is that important? And right now I'd say it's not important because I had to deal with that. But and you have dreams and desires as a young married couple that you think, what are our kids going to look like? And those thoughts happen, and you have to kind of go, well, that's dead. So there's a mourning that happens. So at the same time that I pressed into God and really felt loved and cared for and assured by Him that my life was still good and we're going to produce great things, you still have to mourn. So it's like a funeral for what you thought your life would produce. And that was so. There are even songs that I remember like worshiping to while going through that frustration. That when the song comes on now, I'm just like instantly brought back to that place where he met me in the pain. And so it's just like,
wow.
man, this song is amazing. Forever, that song will be better than all other songs, you know.
Right.
And if I want to just like, if I want to cry, I'll go listen to one of those songs and go, man, it'll get me there immediately. So yeah, that's the infertility side of things. Now, let's talk about some good things. Like how about immediately some more frustrating things that get me in the direction of good news. So when we finally got to the place where we're like, well, we tried even medical intervention up to a certain point.
Yeah.
Like there are certain things when it comes to fertility that I'm not willing to go into because I feel like I'd be playing God in a realm that I'm not allowed to. Like discarding certain, like, this might rub people wrong, but I'm just going to say what I believe is true.
Sure.
If you fertilize an egg, that's a human life. And if you try to pick one of the eggs to be like one of the fertilized eggs, human being, to be more suitable, and they pick that one and they discard the rest, I go, that's human life you just discarded. So I said, I'm not doing that.
Not doing that.
I am drawing the line there. I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
So we went everything up to that point, and you spend lots of money at each trying to help make things happen. And science failed us, so I don't believe in science anymore.
It's science.
No, if you're not watching this, I'm definitely saying that with a smirk on my face. I believe in science. It just failed me. So, so then we finally go, all right, we're adopting. We're gonna pursue that route. So it all shifts within a matter of months. Like now that we know that this isn't happening, it's adoption. That's the route. We're gonna go at it with everything we got. And so we decided we would do international adoption. And I mean, there's so many different ways you can adopt. First of all, if anybody is thinking about it, you can go through the state. You can take the pride classes to get qualified for foster care system. You can foster. You can get into that system just to adopt. You can pursue just a private agency locally in your state or in your country. And then you can adopt internationally.
Yeah.
Or you can have just some crazy out of nowhere scenario come to your feet and you have to get an adoption attorney involved, and it's just a private adoption. There's all kinds of ways. Yeah. And so when we were pursuing international adoption, we chose Taiwan and we prayed, like there were so many, I mean, how many countries are there in the world? There was like 4. And so we picked one of them,
at least 4,
which is Taiwan, which apparently is still a country, China. And so Taiwan, they had this adoption agency. We just really liked what they were doing. They would go to young women who were pregnant and try to persuade them to not abort, and that if they did, we would have all these resources for you, and you could put your child up for adoption. So we were like, I like that. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons our hearts were drawn to that. So we do that, get into the program, and just in case you're thinking, oh, well, that's got to be a pretty easy process. It's not. It's long, drawn out, expensive. At one point, we were up to over $30,000 invested into the program to adopt. What that money all goes to, I'll spare you, but some of it's like, that's pointless, $6,000 fee to just the government over there or whatever. Wow. So I'm like, we're dealing with human beings. Can't we streamline this a little bit more? So anyway, there's all that end of the frustration that you take home with you after, to get real, very real. If you are a working person and trying to do this, your life continues going on while you're trying to make something happen that's extremely difficult, that's out of your control to a degree. And so you go have your work day and you come home to empty house still, no feet pattering around. Your wife, though, God love her, she's an amazing person, but you're still feeling the absence and like the emptiness of the space to a degree. So anyway, pursuing adoption through Taiwan, we were finally on a list, and we're starting to see our name climb the list to get closer to being placed with a child. And we were like, oh man, what's it going to be like to go to Taiwan? And then you start dreaming about going to Taiwan because you have to go there to pick the kid up and bring him home, and you spend a week there or whatever. And then a law changed in Taiwan that put a halt to the program over there. So then you're just like, okay, well, what does this mean? And we didn't know for months what that meant. We didn't know if the program would continue or what. And so every few months you get another email going, we still don't know what's going on over here. The law is not very clear and blah, blah, blah. All to say, 7 months later or something in that direction, we finally get this letter or this email saying, well, we have officially been shut down over here, and the options are you can pivot to another country and pursue the adoption that way through another country, but the majority of your money doesn't switch over because it's already been spent in translation fees and all kinds of other things. It's already been spent.
All the money's like government required stuff they have to do. Like it's just like
so it's gone.
It's not like they were saving it for you for the adoption. They had to use it.
Yeah, you're paying for like people to go to court for you to put documents in and all this stuff. So that's gone, and only a little bit of it would shift, and we were just like, no thanks. Like now we have a bitter taste in our mouth through that. And then I remember having a conversation with my wife where she was like, are we just not meant to have kids? And it's like, when you're presented with that question, it's like, okay. Now, number one, if I'm going to spend my life as not as a father, but as a married person, just my wife and I, we'd have an amazing life, right? Like, truly would. Like, especially this woman I'm married to, I'm like, yeah, I would find fulfillment. I would be happy. I would have joy. But I remember when she raised the question, I'm like, nah, it just wasn't. I was convinced, no, this isn't it. It's not it for us. It's not just going to be you and me. Like, we're going to keep pushing. Because then you get the tension of, was this God shutting the door? Or is this where I have to persevere and push through, right? Like, I mean, that's right. This is like real. Like, do I continue on? Do I not? Do I just go, this is my battle, I got to win. And I was convinced it was a battle that we had to win. Yeah. So we kept going. And, we would get, along the way, there would be we'd hear of a young teenage girl pregnant.
Real quick on that, because I do think that's
please interrupt at any point if you want.
A common thing and something I've felt. So how did you determine it was just something you had to persevere versus it being, nope, this is God telling me? So what, because those can look very identical a lot of times, I feel like. So how were you able to kind of differentiate between the two?
I put a fleece out. I said, you got to strike me dead with lightning if it's, I'm kidding. So I just, you pray and you go, Lord, I asked the question. I never heard a no. So I never, though I saw circumstances be difficult, I never had an impression from him, whether it was reading scripture or in prayer time when I really feel impressed about an idea that's for me, because that's one of the ways that I believe he speaks to me is you just something will become massively important, this has never been important before, so you want me to do this. So that's one of the ways that I feel a shove in a direction or not. But I never have felt a clear no or anything. And then so I just said, all right, well, until he makes it very clear, I'm going to move forward. And he can make it clear or not, but he never made it clear to stop. So
where previously on other events or things in your life, you have heard clear no's from God or obvious door shutting type thing. So you're able to kind of look back on that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And this didn't feel like any
the same as that. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
Just need to judge that against your past experience with God, knowing that it's not just well, I've never asked him before, and I'm asking now. Well, I don't really know what he's saying. It's you've actually had a history of God, what do you talking to him and praying, conversation with him, and knowing what those things feel like and what it looks like, and to be able to judge that against that is really, I think that's an overlooked part of things, rather than just well, I asked him once and we're good.
It's actually, that muscle doesn't come out of nowhere. It was something that you had been exercising for years. And
that's
right.
Really neat.
And it's pretty clear to me when he doesn't want me to do a thing, or it starts to become very obvious. I lose passion for that thing that he says no to, because that I'm okay, if you don't want me going that route, I'll shift my passion in another direction. But none of that ever connected on that. Now, at the same time that we're dealing with that, we're investing in ministry at our church and growing youth group at that point. We were considered youth at that point. And then, you keep on going along and you still don't have kids. And the people who used to be kids are now becoming adults and they're getting married and they're starting to have kids. and you're like, is this season gonna pass me with them? Like, because I want to like go through that season with people that I love and enjoy and want to be around, and I didn't want to end up being old Abraham like other people. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm like, I'd really like to, if I didn't get to go through it with some of the other people that are starting their families, I'd like to go with this group, like have kids at the same time. And so I was like, is it going to happen or not? Like, what is it? So there was that whole thing to deal with mentally.
I was in your group for a while when that was happening. And I felt, personally, I felt like not a tension between us at all, but like just like this, like feeling for you guys, and then also my family's growing, and I'm like feeling bad at the same, like, and feeling good because like it's a really tough thing. And it was just to see that, but I never felt any pushback from you guys toward my family or towards the ministry you're doing, and I just want to get your perspective on that too, like because they're going through one of the hardest things that they're as a couple they've ever faced, right? What was your view on that you're really close to David and I, like from the outside looking in, what does that look like? How they handled it and like went through it?
Yeah, I'm sure this is something you're thankful for, being able to look back, and you can look back and maybe you had times personally when you're like, man, I screwed up there, but from the outside, I never had a moment. I can't think of one moment where I'm like, man, they just threw in the towel, or they've neglected something else that God has given them the responsibility for. Like, never once did I see a bump in the road. I'm sure internally behind closed doors, but in terms of letting it affect other people, I never saw it. And it's something Dr. C at our church always says, like, are you going to look back on painful times? Because it's one thing to go through pain and you're kicking and screaming and complaining the whole time, but also going through that same circumstance, but you're thankful through it. You're still loving people. You're still doing what God's called you to do. Like, those are your two options. The circumstances are out of your hands, but you have two ways of how you can respond to it. And I never saw you complaining. You know, you would be honest with us and be like, man, this is tough. But it was never taken as complaining. It was just you being honest and real with your feelings and what you were going through. And you never neglected anything that God had placed on y'all's plate and a responsibility. If anything, you saw it as, okay, God, maybe this is the reason we're not having kids, because we got to really lean into what you've given us and give it all that we have. Not kids change things, right? I don't have kids yet, but time, I'm sure, dries up a lot faster, and sleep is a lot less, and all those different things. So I was on the receiving end. To answer your question, I was on the receiving end with that. I'm very close with you and your wife, and spent a lot of time with you guys doing nothing and traveling, just like seen it all type thing. And it was actually cool because, not that I was in the same exact circumstances, but in a different season where me not being married and looking around and everyone I see is freaking married, right? And it's different than having kids. It's I guess a little more in your control than actually having kids is, but still, just tried things, didn't work. So I was able to really kind of go through that same thing with you guys at the same time, but not, I was able to look at y'all and pull from you guys, right? So it's different circumstances, but the same idea. And I was able to look at y'all's lives and see how you responded and how you persevered. And I'm like, well, I can apply those same things they're doing to my situation and my circumstances. So I greatly greatly benefited from. That's one silver lining. I'm sure you wish you had kids, right? But I was on the benefiting side of it, without a doubt. So.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we had some fun travels and got to go places, and like that's the other thing, it's not all pain. Like, there's amazing things that redeem that time that you felt was either not granted to you or not. But like, I don't think I'd have been near as close to Casey as I am today if not for that time. Because he was over at our house, and we would go to Chicago, and we'd take trips to Washington D.C. and go experience like some places we'd never been before, and have like moments where I'm like, my bond with this person is deeper than it ever would have been. Right. And because we were, we would dress him up like a kid.
Stop. Okay, so If you want to know if that really happened, ask Casey. But
feed him a baba, you know.
all this times of struggle, and you do have children now, and something really big's happening this week.
Everybody can have a sigh of relief. I do have kids now.
So can we walk into that? Like, maybe something else you want to talk about there, but like, can we get towards like, what was it like to actually adopt and move into that? Like, what that second half of the story, you know?
Yeah. So there were like situations that, you know, occasionally would come into our orbit where like there was somebody that was pregnant and a teenager, and they were considering either aborting the child and we'd go meet with that person to say this is the people that your kid would be placed with. And then I mean that's an emotional thing to walk away from, just going, what is this life we're living, you know? And to not get the call that they're probably going to abort the child, and it's like, golly. So like, what could I have said? How could I have proved? You know, there's those things that rumble around in your head. And anyway, so what ends up happening is we get. I'm gonna try and like condense this as best I can, but I have a dream. This is shortly after the Taiwan thing fell through. Have a dream that I'm in my bed on the house that we used to live in on Betty Street, across from the Bartlesons. Shout out to the Bartlesons if you're listening. But I'm sleeping. And I'm dreaming, and I don't normally do that. I normally sleep. I normally don't dream.
I just dream. I don't sleep. It's really weird.
I'm a daydreamer.
It's common at night.
If I dream at night, the dream is like whatever I ate the night before is trying to eat me back. You know, so it's like nothing's like in the realm of reality.
Is that real? Is that really?
I'm joking.
Okay.
It's something I just say, not true. But I don't ever have dreams that feel real. Right? That's the thing.
Okay.
And so I'm having a dream where I'm in my bed, and it's like kind of like a bird's eye view looking down at my bed, me holding my child.
Out of body experience. So you see yourself.
But it's in my bedroom, and I see the bed. I see where it's positioned in our room. I see the bathroom over here. I see the art on the walls and all this stuff. The big painting of me being manifested on a mountain, which was an actual event. I wasn't born. And so that's in there. And so
I think this whole thing is a joke.
All right, so that manifesting on a mountain thing didn't true. But it's a bird's eye view. I'm holding this little baby who's African American in my hands, and that's my kid. And so I wake up from that dream, and I'm actually crying. Like I've never woken up crying before, unless I was a kid, right? But as an adult, I don't wake up crying. And I turn over to my wife, and I'm like, I just had the craziest dream, and told her about the dream, and I'm like, it just felt so real. And she's like, that's interesting. And even Matthew Boyce, I told him the dream. He can confirm this, that I told him that dream took place. And there are other people that knew about it. I said it to.
Matthew Boyce, comment below. Did this really happen or not?
It did. And so then 2 weeks later, this girl that, because of the Lovely Project, the nonprofit that our church is all about, my wife and her sisters and some of her friends, they all got together and started the Lovely Project. And so through that outreach into the community, we the birth mother of my daughter Selah came to our church and met us. She didn't realize at the time that she was pregnant. And then she's like, well, I'm not going to abort this child because I believe that's now wrong. And she said, she heard that we were looking to adopt, and she approached us after a Sunday and said, can we go to lunch to talk about doing this? And I'm just like, okay. And then we go to that lunch, and it's like, it is so weird to go to those lunches, but at the same time, I have to elevate this person because everything that they said they would do, they did. They included us in the process, going to doctor's appointments, finding out the gender and everything, and seeing that happen was cool. And we loved, still do love her. Mm-hmm. And one day we'll introduce Selah to her when it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. But and that's the other angle of adoption, that when it happens this way, it's like there's other things that can be either socially strange for you, or like, wow, we're living off the blueprint here now. Like, what's the path forward? Yeah. So anyway, 9 months later, I'm in the room terrified, sitting on a couch with Christine Sellers on my left and my wife over at the foot of the bed with the birth mother, and she gets to watch Selah be born, and I'm like, I can't see that because I might pass out. So I don't look. But I remember just a minute after she was born being placed in my hands, and I even got to cut the umbilical cord and have all those special moments with her. And just like, I just remember holding her and just going, thank you, God. Just thanking him. And even at that point, it's not official, right? Because it's not until the birth mother signs out of the hospital that the paperwork is done at that point. Yeah. We had a great adoption attorney who is now a judge, and she's a wonderful person, and she helped us through all that. And so that's Selah. And then I just remember being in a room separate as the paperwork was being signed, and I'm holding my daughter, or actually Aslan's holding Selah, and then the text comes through. She goes, can you hold her? And I took Selah, and she read the text, and she said, it's done, signed. And then she starts just bawling, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome, she's ours. And then she's a better person than me, because she was like, I'm happy, yes, but I'm also very sad for the birth mother because of what she's having to do to give up. That what an incredibly hard choice to do. So as much as it's a beautiful thing to adopt children, it's also a very difficult reality for the person on the other side of this whole thing, for them to have to do that. So, but we did believe it's the right choice, setting her life up for more success and Selah's.
Wow.
And then so that's Selah, and we've had her. She's going to be 8, and on the 26th of this month. And so our first adoption is in November, right?
It's really cool. If you want to get to know Selah better, she just did a Kids Church video with me.
Yeah.
And she said I'm her best friend. So I don't know if that was just for video purposes to make it better, but I gotta believe it's true because
you're all right. Yeah. You were a good friend to me, so I'll allow it. So I have 3 kids, so that was the first.
Yeah.
The next, so after we had Selah, and a couple years went by, we were like, well, we want more kids, so we'd better get into this and start. Because it took 7 years to from when we really started trying before we got her. And then so bam, now we got her. And so we were like, well, let's get into the foster care system and let's take the classes and get approved. We did that. It was a 9-week course. We got it done. And then just hiccup after hiccup, home study would be partially done, and then that person would quit. And just it was really hard to get everything.
Tough system to be in.
Very tough. God love the people that are involved in it. It's tough, it's hard. They have to see a lot of things that I don't know that I could handle every day.
It's easy to get frustrated with it, but it's a system set up to try to fix broken relationships and broken families.
So to expect it to be smooth.
Yeah, it shouldn't have to exist. So by design, it can't work well. It's just maybe there's something that can be better, but it's just not. Right. I believe it can't be possible for it to be a smooth, perfect system because you're dealing with just people that have been broken and hurt and families that have been torn apart. It's just almost impossible to make that smooth. That's.
So I'll spare some of the details as to why, even after having done that, we never got placed or anything like that. There's a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But I won't go into that. But I will say there was one time that we got really close to where it came down to us and another family. And it was a little girl that we got to the point where Selah was praying with us for this to happen, and it didn't happen. And the other family got chosen. I'm at work. Here in Winter Park, I'm at a homeowner's house, and I said, hey, I could be getting a call any minute to say that I'm being chosen as the adopted family or not. And so they were very kind and gracious, and so I think this is the call, I got it. And the awkwardness of that person to see me get the call saying no, I was just like, I gotta go home. Yeah. And they were like, totally get it. I was like, I gotta go be with my wife, because on the other side of the phone call was my wife and my daughter, both not doing well, emotionally, because we were really hoping that this would happen. So you go home and you throw all your plans out the window, and you're just like, let's go get chocolate drunk. Get all the chocolate in the world, bring it home. And we eat whatever we want and try to lick our wounds, and then some time passes and you're like, I guess it's just us 3. Kind of like before, you're like, is it just going to be my wife and I? And then it's like, is it going to be I mean, not just my wife and I. Great option.
Right.
And then you go, it was just going to be Aslan, myself, and Selah. Also a great option.
Yeah.
You start like thinking about, well, hey, we'll have a lot more money to throw at her, and like we'll be able to travel more as she gets older, and we don't have to think about littler ones behind her. And we started just leaning into the positives of that. But it's not like, again, to your earlier question, or what, I don't know how God brought up, but like it didn't feel like a clear no. It just was like, if this is what's going to happen,
if this is your
I'm
will,
okay.
then we will make it work. Yeah.
I'll be content. And but Selah was of the other mind. She was like, no, this is not okay. I'm like, well, my daughter's saying it's not okay. Our family is not okay as it currently is. And she was like, I want sisters. Specifically, she was like, I want sisters. And my wife and I were like, well, you better go ask God for that, because we've done everything we can, and we got close once, and like we're open to it, but you got to ask him. And so she persisted and got to the task of praying. And what's interesting is we prayed for this other one that got real close, and it didn't happen. So it's like, you'd think that might discourage a kid from asking God for things. But she was like, no, I'm going after it again.
I love
this
that.
time,
I think I've seen, just doing family and kids ministry, like I've seen parents put their disappointment on their kids at times, where it's like, well, it's not going to happen. We already asked God, or it's not going to happen. We prayed about that. It's not going to happen. We can't handle it. And you guys didn't put your disappointment or your expectation on Selah. You said, ask God and let her faith rise up. And that's really cool to me, just to see from the outside looking into that. Like, you didn't tell her that's not going to happen. That's not possible, because God might have something different for her too. You know, that's a really awesome way to raise her, and it's really special.
Yeah, incredible lesson for her to learn that like this is how God interacts with people, and like experiencing that with her. So, but she was specific. She said, she didn't say I want a sister. I wanted sisters. And so she started praying for that. And then, so this is just kind of a throw it in there. Seek first the kingdom, and all else will be added to you. I can't get that verse out of my head. Seek first the kingdom. And so what my wife and I did was, while we were trying to build our family and it wasn't happening, is we sought the kingdom. We threw ourselves into ministry, and how do we help the church and give to the church and make it a beautiful thing to invite people into.
Yeah.
So we got about that task. And our disciples at the time were the ones that got us in contact with the birth mother for Selah. And so the people we were pouring into helped facilitate growing our family with Selah. And I'm just like, golly, I'm forever grateful. So shout out to Amaris Beecher, who was Amaris Brandon at the time, and then Caitlin Simon, who was Caitlin Strombeck at the time. Those two are who I credit with that coming into my family. And then, as Selah is praying for sisters, your brother, Eric, is a nurse manager at the hospital that he works at. And the situation for my now daughters, Raina and Peyton, were he was approached by the grandmother of those girls saying, do you know anybody looking to, who would be interested in adopting these girls? And he's like, I might. So, and here we are, and this coming Friday, a few days from now, the adoption will be official.
Wow.
And they'll be my girls. And I look at the people in my life that I've loved and have at times poured into their lives, and we've encouraged each other. And because we're trying to build a vibrant community for Christ, those people are who have brought this to come, to this point. So, and there's a whole lot of other details, but that's the gist of it. That's how my family has been built. How has it changed? I'll ask myself a question.
Yes.
How has it elevated or changed my view of God? Well, to me, I was raised by a single mother, and so I feel like I've been adopted in a sense by my father-in-law, who is to me, he's a dad to me.
Yeah.
Took me under his wing, said, you're a part of my family, like made me feel like a part of the family before I was even married to his daughter. And I'm like, that's my dad. So I feel like I've been adopted even as an adult in a sense. But this is deep into the doctrine of adoption, in my opinion. So my faith, and this is how I view all other faiths, all of them are inferior because adoption is not central to salvation. With Christianity, you are a Christian because God looked at you and didn't just look at you as this cute little baby. Like, looked at you as a full-grown man or woman, filthy with sin, and said, I must have them as my kid. And it's like, it's easy for me to look at Selah as a baby and go, give me this kid. It's harder when they get older to go, give me this kid. And the more it's like, give me this kid, you know, like it changes the tone. But it has made me go, there's no earning it with God. There's no earning your place in the family. Selah didn't have to pay or perform or do anything to get entrance into my family, nor did Peyton or Raina. All three of them only had to exist, and I just had to say yes.
That's
right?
awesome.
And so I said, yes, come in. And so it's the same thing with God. God looks at you and he goes, I want you.
That's
right?
beautiful.
And so adoption, I anytime if I'm the one that like is the host at our church on Sundays, anytime that I'm that guy, like almost every time I'm praying, like I'm praying about adoption in some capacity or some way. But I think it's just central to our faith.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, it's just God says yes. And to your point, like, we were fine alone. We have more money for ourselves, or we were fine with one kid. We have more money for ourselves. So the more you add, the more the parents pay. And I just feel like God is like similar in that. It's not it's not a perfect metaphor, but just like he paid the cost for us to come in. You know, and he laid down his son. Jesus laid down his life so we could be adopted in. It's just like that's the gospel. It's really beautiful.
I've even said it, but I don't like it. The more I think about it is when I hear, don't have too many kids, can't really afford it. It's hard to afford to have kids. I go, hold on, whoa. First of all, way wrong way to look at kids. They're priceless, right? I'll pay anything. At one point, I would pay upward of $30,000 to get one into my house, right? Part of my story. But I'm like, the money.
Just to be clear here, unless I remember incorrectly, you weren't making really great money. It was like just saving and other people providing and other things happening. Like, it's just
creative, and there was fundraisers and people.
Unbelievable.
Mike and Moggy McCubbin stroked a check in an amount that was just like, golly, you guys love us, obviously, and and that all went to pot, or we think it did, but that didn't happen. It's not
smoking pot. It was just it was an old saying that old people say. It means it's gone now.
The money went away.
Taiwanese government officials.
They probably did.
That's gonna be the title of this video. Taiwanese government officials smoking pot. Bowden's fun Taiwanese.
Oh man. So.
Anyway, adoption is beautiful. People are providing. Kids are not.
So money.
Like money.
I go. How narrow to go? Kids don't have X amount of kids, or whatever the argument is, because it's expensive. I go. Yeah, but I have a God that provides.
Yeah.
If I'm called to have 7 kids like my brother up north, he'll provide. He provides for my brother all day long, and you don't have to be extremely wealthy. It's just like. You just need to move forward and have a family to whatever number that is and trust that God will provide. So this is just a little thing I want to throw in at the end.
So really practical steps forward, because this is awesome. And you can be like, well, I can't adopt kids right now, or I've already had kids, or that's not what you're called to do. Really practical steps. There are families at our church, if you guys go to Northwest, that you can like help out with a meal. You can help fund their adoption or their foster care process. I know there's some families that are starting that process now, which is really cool. To come alongside them is huge. Or if you want to adopt in a really neat way, there's an organization called Compassion International where you can actually sponsor a child and you write letters back and forth. And actually, my family right now is sitting down.
We've done that
to choose a child. You adopt them through until they become an adult, and you very little amount a month to like actually help them to adulthood, medical and physical needs and stuff like that. Or foster care adoption. If you want to know more about that, reach out to me, reach out to Dave. We can put you in contact with people who can take you to the next step. It's exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do for people doing that. Encourage them, take them to lunch, say I'm excited about what you're doing. Yeah. Even though hard times are going to come, there's so much you can do, and it's a hard road, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
All right. Love you guys. See you next time. Conversations about God. See you.